up our pumpkin seed sourdough, and then we'll make a salad and some homemade dressing and cut up some fruit. So let's start by getting our sourdough ready to go into the oven. Pull it out. And let's give it a good score. We did a loaf today. And I'm going to do a nice big score. Ah! I always lose this half the time. Apparently I didn't put it on it right again. There we go. So we got our nice score. I'm just going to go over that one more time since I was going there. And let's see. It's kind of hard. I've got all these pumpkin seeds, so I might do a second score over here. We'll see how it looks. We'll be like an artist. Just some random scoring today.
It's gonna implode.
It might. It is big. It like poofed up. But you know, it's like the changing of the seasons and the house is changing, so hopefully I'm always like, oh, season change. Hopefully it doesn't mess with my loaf. I'm going to put the lid on. I've got my oven preheated to 500 degrees. There. We're going to pop this in there. We're going to bake this at 500 degrees for 20 minutes with the lid on. There we go. And then we'll turn it down to 450 and bake for 20 minutes with the lid off. Everything is good. Apparently I can't walk. Got my little platforms on, not that I'm not already 5'9", but you know, these make me almost 6 feet, so kind of like it. Okay, let's get going. We're gonna cook up a pound of bacon for our shrimp and grits. We're gonna saute it up. This is gonna season the sauce, and we're gonna use a little bit of that bacon grease for frying up our shrimp as well. Gives it a little bit more flavor. So it's kind of a nice part. I'm using a thick cut, which I think is great for cooking versus for eating. I like the thinner cut for eating, but the thick cut is nice for cooking because it's a bit more substantial. Just pop this in the trash. And then I'm just going to use my kitchen shears here, and we're just going to cut it up into nice little kind of chunks. No science to it, no precision, just snippy snips.
You have a question? Do you ever have to throw food out because it wasn't eaten?
No. I try to really make sure I just have enough food for each night. And then, like my parents, if they don't eat with us, I always send it home with them. And I just send everything with them because I just think they don't know how to cook anymore. I think they've forgotten because I've been cooking them all their food for so many years. So no, I rarely have to throw food out. Now I will say if a leftover goes into my fridge, then yes, it'll probably get thrown out. But I try to send everything home with my parents with their meals. But that's where I always try to make sure I'm making the right portion. I actually kind of sometimes try to err on the smaller side just because we have always so many components to our meals and bread and desserts that I always like to make sure there's just enough and not a lot extra, unless of course if it's somebody's favorite food, then I always try to make extra because it's like ravioli. They love it and it's a time consuming meal, so I don't like to make it often, but when I do that I make a huge batch of it. Okay, let me give my hands a quick rinse.
A huge batch of ravioli.
Oh, well.
The same ravioli we ran out of last time.
Yes, I make a huge batch, and somehow they'll eat like 3 or 4 plates of it, and more than they would eat of anything else ever. But it's because I made it, and they're all like scarfing it down as fast as they can, and I'm like, geez. I know last time I made ravioli, and like my stepdad came to pick it up for him and my mom, and my husband and my son were still eating some, and they were like, and David was like, pack it up faster before they come back for another round. And he was like telling them they'd had enough to eat. Okay, we're gonna get our bacon cooking up. I've got my pan heating up here on an 8 to let it sweat out that fat. And while we're doing that, let's prep our onion. We're gonna saute up a yellow onion with this. And we've got peppers, tomatoes, and zucchini that we need to chop up for our kind of our base for our shrimp and grits. I'm throwing in some zucchini in here. Normally I might leave it out, but I might not use it. I'm deciding. I think I want to use it, but we'll see. Typically I don't use it, but I was trying to add another vegetable in for the kids. So who knows? It may get used, it may not. I feel like zucchini can go in really anything you cook because it's just like a big sponge. It just really soaks up the flavors that you cook it in. And we're kind of doing it a little bit of a Cajun style for our shrimp and grits. There we go. Got our onions. Have these prepped. I have 2 peppers. We got orange, and then I wanted to use a little bit of a green pepper here just for a bit of color. Typically I steer clear of the green peppers because I don't think they have as nice of a flavor. They're a bit more bitter, but sometimes they're the right flavor profile. And I feel like with Cajun food, you can get away with the green peppers. I'm going to do I'm going to dice these up too because I don't want any of my veggies to be super large. I kind of want it to be a nice little sauce that will go with our shrimp and grits. Now, I find if you cut your peppers, your bell peppers from the inside versus the outside, so cut them inside versus the skin, they cut much nicer. Your knife will go through it much better, less likely to slip, just has a little bit more grab on it versus the other way. So we've got our green pepper chopped up.
You have a question? Where do you get your meal ideas from?
You know what? I just kind of see what I'm feeling like, you know what I mean? And then I don't really, and this is terrible, I don't really meal plan, which I probably could be so much more productive if I do. But when I go to the grocery store, I just buy what looks good and what's on sale because, you know, I'm always trying to kind of find ways to make our grocery bill cheaper because feeding 9 people every day is expensive, especially when groceries, I feel like, keep going up. But I kind of pick on what's in season, what's on sale, and then I just buy it, and then I kind of feel what I like every day. I always have my staples in my house. You know, I've got my pantry that's full of, you know, rice and different pastas, and, you know, like grits and polenta, so you can kind of have any side with whatever we're baking. And then, of course, my spice cabinet is always full. And then I will say one thing that makes this like a work for me is because I have 4 refrigerators, and I know this sounds ridiculous, and I didn't just go out and buy 4 refrigerators. They've kind of collected with us over time. When we moved into this house about 10 years ago, we brought a refrigerator with us, but our house had this really old, I want to say maybe late 80s, early 90s fridge. It was, you know, the one with the freezer on top and the thing in there, and and had an old dishwasher, and we ended up replacing all of our appliances. So that meant we had 2 outdoor fridges, which I was like, oh great, one will be like an overload produce fridge, the other one will be a drink fridge. And then when we just remodeled our house, our kitchen, like a year and a half ago, the ice maker on our fridge broke, and it was going to be almost as expensive to buy a new one to replace it. It was going to be like $800. And I said, let's just get a new one. We'll move it out to the top because I'm not going to spend $800 to fix an 8-year-old refrigerator, which will probably break down in a couple of years. So we bought a new refrigerator, and then there's our 3rd refrigerator out there. And so it's always stocked with so much produce and, you know, food. I have big drawers full of potatoes and onions, everything that you need to make my staple. So it's like going into a grocery store and figuring out what to make.
So, question, what's your favorite cuisine to cook and your favorite cuisine to eat?
I will say my favorite cuisine to cook, I love Italian food. And I will say it's probably my favorite to eat. I'm a bread and pasta girl. I love it to death. Probably a bit too much. We've got our onions and our peppers chopped. Let's get ready on, I'm going to actually, we'll just move them up to here. And then we're going to start prepping our tomatoes. That way we can have all of our prep done and it's showtime. So I've got, these are just some plum tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, and we're going to decore them for our shrimp and grits tonight. This is going to be our kind of, I'm using fresh tomatoes in it because it's going to have such a nice flavor, but you could use canned tomatoes, about 2.
And your favorite to eat?
Italian. So I said like my favorite to cook and to eat. It's probably both Italian because I love my bread and pastas. So, although
Indian food
is I love Indian food, but I rarely cook it and I rarely get to eat it because I'm alone in that. My family doesn't share my passion for Indian food or Ethiopian food. Love it. Love it. Just those different cuisines that they're a bit more challenging to cook at home because you really need to have those more exotic spices, which are kind of hard to come by. I feel like Indian food, you can definitely get more and more spices now to make some of the common ones. And I do have a couple curry dishes I make, but Ethiopian food is just really hard to recreate at home. And I will say a lot of Asian dishes are hard unless I can go to an Asian market and get the right kind of sauces and spices for that. Okay. We're letting our bacon kind of crisp up a little bit here. And then we got a couple more tomatoes down. So I'm putting a nice kind of dice on my tomatoes. I don't want them to be too big because I do want them to really sweat out and turn into a sauce. And if you leave them a bit too big, their skins will get kind of stringy. So just kind of a nice kind of slice up. I will say if your knife slips on tomatoes, which is one of those big indicators, if you have trouble cutting through a tomato, you just need to sharpen up your knife. That's, for me, is when I know my knives need sharpening, is when I'm trying to cut a tomato and it just keeps slipping. That's my biggest indicator to sharpen up my knife. There we go. We got 3 more to go. And then we're going to drain some of this bacon grease out and we'll add our onions in. We're going to put the bacon grease in my other pan. We're going to save that for when we saute up our shrimp. But since shrimp cooks really fast, we're not going to do that until closer to the end of our meal because I don't want it to sit and get cold. Shrimp is really easy to overcook. So we're going to cook it at the very, very last minute, last 5 minutes. That way it will be nice and hot and have a good kind of crisp on it. Okay, looks like we are done with our first major set of preps. We'll do some fresh herb prep in a little bit. So we've got our yellow onion diced up, a green pepper diced up, an orange bell pepper, and then about 8 plum tomatoes or Roma tomatoes diced up. Okay. I'm going to turn this down, and we're going to steal some of this bacon grease because we're not cooking this for like a pure crispiness, but we want this to season up our thing. So I'm trying to get it without losing any bacon in there. I'm just going to try to get a good amount in here. And we're going to saute our shrimp in that. It'll be just lovely. Okay, let's add in our onions first. We're going to cook them with the bacon in there. No need to take out. A lot of times you'll see recipes and they're like, cook the bacon and then remove it. Yeah, I never do. I always just keep it in there. There we go. Give it a good stir. Don't worry if you have bits of your bacon sticking onto your pan. When we add in our tomatoes and a little bit of cream later, that will all come off, but they'll add a great flavor. Those are your crispy bits, so when we deglaze it, it will be nice and ready. Let's get our grits going. So I'm going to turn on my back burner here. I've got 3 cups of milk. And then we're going to add 3 cups of water. And then this will be for 1.5 cups of grits. We're going to bring it to a boil and then we'll add in our grits. I'm going to make It's going to be like a 4 cheese grits to go with it. I have got Swiss Gruyere, Parmesan, and Gouda. So it's going to be delicious, but they're going to be a nice cheesy grits. So, but we want this to come to a boil. And let's add in some, I'm going to add garlic salt instead of just plain salt. It gives it a little bit more savory of a flavor. We want about 2 teaspoons. I'll bring that in there. And I'm going to have it on high. And I'm going to put my lid on. That will just help my Dutch oven heat it up a little bit faster. Okay. I'm going to give my onions a nice stir. I'm just cooking them till they're just a little bit, they're starting to get translucent. I'm not waiting necessarily for a caramelization. Just translucent means they've lost most of that astringent flavor in them, and they'll be nice and tender. Okay. I will say, bacon and onions smell so good. And now we're going to add in some garlic in there. Let me grab a spoon. We're going to put in about a tablespoon of garlic. This is just going to add a really nice flavor. If you were going to use fresh garlic, you probably want around 5 to 6 cloves that you mince up. There we go. There we go. Give it a good stir. We're going to let that kind of saute for just a second here. And let's get our green onions kind of prepped, because we're going to throw our green onions in here with our onions, at least the bottom part. We'll save the greener part at the top for coming in a little bit later to keep that flavor fresh. I'm going to give them a quick rinse. I'll say recently they call these green onions, but these look more like spring onions because they are so fat. A lot bigger than I'm used to getting from the store, but they've been delicious. So I'm just going to cut off the very tips because this white part will be great to be sauteed up. So no need to get rid of them because we are cooking. If you were doing a dish that you were eating like fresh or raw, you wouldn't want to use those white parts because they'd be pretty astringent in flavor. So we're going to save the green parts to come in later because they're a bit more delicate, and we're going to throw these white parts in now. Let them cook up. There we go. Give them a quick stir. And as I'm stirring them, I am taking I'm scraping at the bottom of my pan to help bring up more and more of those kind of tasty little bits from the bacon. Okay. Let's add in our bell peppers now. We've got our green and our orange. I'm waiting to add the tomatoes in until these have a nice little crisp up, because once you add those tomatoes in, they're going to start sweating out a lot of liquid, and you're not going to be able to get a good saute on the rest of your peppers that way. So always think about when you're sauteing up vegetables, leave the most tender or the juiciest ones for last. That way you'll be able to get a good saute on the rest of it, and that's going to add out a lot of flavor. Okay, let's let those saute up nicely, and throw that in there. We're going to move our tomatoes to the side so I can start prepping the rest of my ingredients. We're going to add in, we'll save parsley towards the end, that's fresh, but I'm going to chop up some fresh basil in here because this will be lovely. I'm going to give it a quick rinse. I'll say I've been picking all my fresh basil out of my garden, and it needs to recuperate. I thought 8 plants were going to be enough, and I'm really thinking I need to double that and have maybe 15, 16 plants. So luckily I have garden space. We were working on getting a new garden area ready. I had these old garden beds that I put in our house when we first moved in. And so we're gonna move, we took those out because they were cedar. And I'm gonna get some new garden beds. We bought some of the Bego ones and had my husband put together. A lot harder to put together than the video makes them seem. A lot more screws. There is no like, oh, it's put together. No, there's about like 100 different screws that you have to put together. But I actually really like them. They look really nice. I got them in this like fun green color. And
It's actually the color of your sweatshirt.
yeah, it is. It's like that vintage retro. It's that kind of cool green color, and I love that color. Hence, it's like the color of my walls, too. If you haven't noticed, green is my favorite color. Oh, lost the spice. I'll get that in just a second. I'm going to give this a good mince here. This is our fresh basil here, and this is just going to help season up. It will go really well with our kind of Cajun spices. Basil is just a really lovely herb. And I will say, when it's fresh, it's not, it has a distinct flavor, but it's not quite as strong as when it's dried. I find dried basil has a bit more of a kick to it. This one mellows out when you cook it. Okay. Let's give our peppers and our onions a nice little stir here. Okay, just making sure nothing gets stuck to the bottom of our pan. There we go. And let's add in some spices in here to kind of let them, I like to bring their flavor out. Well, we'll do that when we come back because our sourdough is ready for its lid to come off. Okay. I hear ya. This is always the moment of truth. Did it pop? Did it not? Looks like we've got a pop. Beautiful. Put it out here. This is our traditional loaf with some pumpkin seeds on it. It was really popping in my Banneton basket. I was hoping it wasn't overproof, but I don't think so. We are going to change the temperature down to 450. That way it doesn't have a super dark crust, and then I'm going to cook it for 20 minutes again. If I can get the button, there we go. I like mine to have a nice kind of blonde to golden brown crust on it. That way it doesn't get too crunchy. I find if it gets too crunchy, it's not as good. Okay. Give this a stir. Let's get our grits in here cooking now. We should have a nice, you can see the steam coming off our milk. So I have 1.5 cups of grits. We're going to stir this in. And then once it starts to come to kind of a rapid boil, we'll turn it down to low and we will put our lid on and let it simmer until the very end when we will add in our cheese.
You have a question? What fruit are you having tonight?
Tonight we are going to have some honeydew melon. I have one. Actually, I went to the store today and I got a lot, but we're going to cut up our honeydew first. I always try to make sure, sometimes my kids will be like, oh, I want this and this, and I'm like, no. We have to eat things first before we can. Okay, let's get our spices in so they can start bringing out the flavor. We're going to use some Cajun spices. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon. And I will say this blend by McCormick is not super spicy, which I like because I'm a spice baby. If you want to use like Tony Chachere's for a bit more kick or add in some red pepper, you can. We're going to use about a tablespoon of paprika. This is going to give it a really nice color to our sauce. Some onion powder, about a tablespoon, and a little bit of Old Bay seasoning here. If I can open it up, there we go. We're going to use some of this on our shrimp as well. About a half a tablespoon, not quite as much. And then we'll do a couple of good shakes of garlic. Whoa! Oh. No worries, guys. Not a big deal. I haven't mixed it up. I've never had that happen before. You know why? I took this off. Hey, guess what? We can make this. I've got a shovel here and a bowl. I haven't stirred it, so we're good. And this is why we can't just jump at it. We're live cooking, but I'm not ruining my dinner tonight. We will add some more in. I'm just going to take out those vegetables. And look, if you zoom in here, we've got almost all of it out, and we really didn't lose that much. So look, we've got about a tablespoon left. So we're going to add just a bit more of our other spices. Look how much. Luckily, we have more than enough to go by. Whew. Good thing it wasn't a soup. See? This is why I do my things on top. Okay, my Old Bay didn't get touched. It's really just my paprika that got hit. And here we go. I'm just going to take actually one little scoop more out. There was a bit right there. Okay. Fun, 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 guys. Note to self, don't take that off and then forget about it. You know, there's always fun stuff that happens in the kitchens, but you know what? As long as you stay calm and level-headed, you're going to realize that it's going to turn out just fine. And luckily, garlic salt is not as salty as regular salt. Okay, we've got this stirring up. We're going to add in our tomatoes. It will sweat out a lot of juice, a nice little flavor to this.
Well, you need more garlic salt now.
Oh my gosh, I just bought this. You're right. I'm going to have to order it on Amazon tonight and get it going here. Because I had bought 2 bottles like a week or 2 weeks ago, and that other one is down really low. Well, don't lose 90% of your bottle on there, but hey, dinner's not ruined, so at least that's the good part. I'm more happy that my dinner's not ruined. Okay, we're going to give this a good stir. You can start to see some of it is thickening up a little bit here, but it's going to thicken up a lot in just a little bit. But I'm going to turn it down now to nice and low because we've got a good boil on it. And then we're going to let it with the lid on because otherwise it's going to boil everywhere and splatter. Okay. Let me try this. Right now we haven't added in all of our ingredients yet, but I just want to make sure. Good. Not even that salty. See? Smart. You just got to think ahead. Okay. Let's let that simmer and cook. Oh yeah. Let's not forget our fresh basil here. We'll give this a good stir. And you see as our little bits on the bottom of our thing are starting to come up as well, which is good. That's going to add a little bit more flavor to it. Okay. And you could use chicken broth if you wanted to, or wings. We're going to use 1 cup of water, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of my chicken bouillon. We're going to add it in here.
The chat saying I need to save it for a bloopers video.
I know. I was going to say, I might not even add chicken broth in here because I don't know if I want to. It's good.
That's what happens when you cook live.
It is what happens when you cook live. Okay, we're going to let this simmer. And while we're doing that, let's prep up our salad, and then we're going to prep up our shrimp. So let's do our salad real quick. We're just going to do a basic garden salad here. It's going to be scrumptious. I always like to have a nice kind of, we're in the summer thing, so a nice fresh salad to go will be great. So we've got some romaine, although I feel like I'm almost ready to pick another batch of romaine. You know, if you just slowly pick your lettuces, they will kind of grow back. If you overpick them before, you know, then they die off. So I'm trying to just pick it once a week for a fresh romaine salad. We've got some baby cucumbers here. I'm going to add a nice little slices. Here we go. And I will say, Baby cucumbers, English cucumbers are so good. They have such a tender skin. I actually prefer them over regular ones, but if you're gonna use a regular cucumber, just give it a skin, like peel it real quick. That way you have a nice tender instead of a bit chewy. I've got a handful of our tomatoes. They've already been washed since I washed them when I did the whole package earlier. And I'm just gonna quarter them. That way they'll soak up our vinaigrette. We'll make it here in a little bit. But I just want to get this prepped because we're going to be peeling up our shrimp in just a second. And that might get a little messy. Okay, and we'll do a little bit of our red onion here. You don't need much, but I do find that red onion is a nice flavor in a salad. I don't even need that much. This is perfect. It adds just a nice little zesty crunch to it. Okay. Let me give this a quick stir. I'm going to get my lemon prepped. We're going to put 1 lemon we're going to use for our shrimp, and 1 is going in here. So I'll squeeze. That acid just kind of really brings out those Cajun flavors, and we'll just make it really lovely. I'm going to turn this down to a low to let it simmer now. There we go. And this is kind of our grits. We're going to add some cream to this towards the end, but you want to add your cream at the very end. Otherwise, it can curdle if you do. Okay, let's peel up our shrimp. We've got these jumbo shrimps here, and I'm just going to pull off the whole thing and just remove them like that. And they're gray. If you're not used to cooking with shrimp, that means they're raw, so we're going to cook them until they turn pink. Shrimp is a really easy food to know when it's done because it's pink. And I will say they're much nicer if you don't get them pre-cooked. Pre-cooked, you're going to get more of a chewy shrimp. And they're really not that hard to peel off. So I get them here. These are, I will say, you can get a smaller size that already come, they will still have the tails on them, but they'll come with the most of it off. But I like these really big jumbo shrimp because look at these. These are huge. And shrimp is just so lovely. We're going to fry these up in our bacon grease. And I'm going to do a Cajun seasoning with some lemon on it, some paprika, and garlic powder. And they'll go really great with our shrimp and grits. We'll go with our grits and then our sauce here that we're making. It's going to be a Cajun tomato-based sauce. It'll be lovely. So we're going to get these all. This is like a little over 2 pounds of shrimp here. And again, don't be afraid to, if you've never done this before, it actually goes pretty fast, and it's really not that difficult. What I do, my technique for doing it is let me grab one. You squeeze right here until that tail pops out, and then you just pull everything off.
And you have a question, they're already deveined?
Yes, that I will glad I am. I always find the ones that have been deveined because that is not a fun process. You have to get little tweezers and pull them out, and I will say, save yourself the work and get that taken care of. Okay. Do I have any more left in here? Oh, there's a few stragglers towards the bottom. And there we go. But always I will say, get the raw shrimp. It just cooks up nicer than the already cooked shrimp. I mean, it just has, I feel like shrimp is one of those things that it overcooks really easily. So it's nice to use them when they're fresh and raw. Let's start heating up this bacon grease and start getting it nice and hot. And then we're going to squeeze our lemon juice over our shrimp that we have right now. The lemon juice is actually going to start cooking it. I know it's not really cooking, but the acid actually starts curing the shrimp. And you'll actually start to see it turn a little pink. If you were to leave it in there long enough, it would turn your shrimp pink, like a ceviche. So it's more like chemical cooking. So we've got our juice of half of our lemon here. Very carefully, I don't have much to mess up with this one. A little bit of the garlic salt. About, I want to say, teaspoons of a little onion powder. That's going to give it a really savory flavor. The paprika will give you this nice, pretty kind of golden color when we cook it up. Just a good sprinkle over. That's probably about a half a teaspoon. And then we're going to use some Old Bay, which I feel is like a seafood quintessential, like. We're just going to give this a nice kind of coat with our hands and kind of get it all. You can see it has that nice flavoring on it. And then when they're ready, we'll drop these in our bacon grease when it's nice and hot. We want it to start bubbling first. Okay.
You have a question? What's Old Bay?
Old Bay is, it's just a basic seafood seasoning. It really is something you can make at home. It has celery salt and then like paprika, red pepper, black pepper. But it's like a seasoned salt that goes over it, but it pairs really well with seafood. And it's super, like, I feel like it's the quintessential one, like crab cakes. Make yourself, you know, chowder. It has Old Bay. You know, it's seafood. It's Old Bay.
And do any of the kids not like shrimp?
You know, we don't actually eat shrimp all that often, but I think everyone likes it. I don't know about Jack, since he's so young, and I feel like his flavor palette changes every other week, whether he likes something or not. But I think he'll like it because he is a meat boy. He loves his meat. So I think he's going to enjoy it. Okay, let's make our dressing for tonight. We're going to do just our kind of our creamy, like balsamic ranch. So we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of mayo. I'm like going through this. I have a little bit of this buttermilk left, so we're trying to use it up. And then 2 tablespoons of buttermilk. And then we're going to put in about a tablespoon of olive oil. And a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of balsamic. Got 1, 2. And now, let's get some fresh herbs put in here. We're going to use some of our fresh herbs, our green onions in there. I'm going to kind of cut them nice and small. This is going to give that a nice oniony flavor to our ranch, which is just lovely. So we're going to add in about a tablespoon of diced up onions. And then I've got some fresh parsley over here. We're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley. Maybe a pinch more. I'm going to mince this up and add it in there because you don't want any super big leaves in there, otherwise it just won't spread onto your salad nicely. So just make sure you have a nice little mince up of your parsley. And honestly, any fresh herbs from your garden taste great in this, except sage. I feel like sage's texture just is not good in a salad dressing because it's fuzzy. But oregano, thyme would all be great in here. We've got our fresh parsley. And then we're going to add a little bit of onion powder in here, about a teaspoon. A little bit of garlic salt, about half a teaspoon. You don't need much, you just want a nice little garlic flavor to it. The mayo is already going to give you kind of a saltier flavor to it. And let's give this a good shake. I'm going to close it up. Shake it up. And we're going to have a nice kind of balsamic ranch, which will have kind of a beige color from the balsamic dressing. But I feel like the flavors work really well together. So we'll have this ready for our ranch. Let's add in our cream, and then we're going to start sauteing up our shrimp in batches. So we're going to add in about a half a cup of cream in here. So that's about a 1/4, about a 1/2. And this is going to give you a nice kind of creamy sauce for our shrimp and grits, which will just be so delicious over our our cheesy grits. Whoop, splash myself. Let me give this a nice little taste. I think our bacon is pretty hot now, so we'll be good for that. Let's try this. Oh, that's good. So good. I love shrimp and grits. Okay, we've got that up. And we're gonna just do a couple shrimp at a time because I don't want it to over sweat out and they don't get a good crispy edge on them. And again, we have them in this bacon grease that's going to add another great flavor to it. There we go. I'll put one more in here, and then we're gonna let those saute up. And the nice thing about shrimp is we'll know they're ready when they turn pink. Here is look at our grits here. And we are just about there, so we're going to add in our cheese in just a second. Made a little mess. But look how those just thickened up so nicely. The trick with grits is you mix them, and then you just forget about them, and then they'll be ready.
You have a question? Do you save bacon grease?
I do not save bacon grease. I know lots of people do, but I never have enough of it really to save, and then I feel like I know the fat keeps it clean. In my mind, it's a mental thing. I'm the same thing with oil. Like when you're frying stuff, I always get rid of it. Okay, we're gonna add in about 2 cups of our Swiss and Gruyere shredded cheese. And then, this is where I'm just getting rid of all my shredded cheeses in here. I've got about a 1/4 cup of Gouda. And I will say grits are a great way to use up your cheese. It's just like a mac and cheese, but slightly different. Mix this in there. And then we've got our Parmesan. I lost piece of cheese. And then I've got some Parmesan cheese here. About, again, maybe a 1/4 of a cup. It's a great way to just kind of get to the bottom of your cheese packages.
You got a comment that someone followed your advice and bought an uncut watermelon to save money.
Yes. Hopefully you'll go through it all. I know if you can't eat it all, but it's so much cheaper. Because that big, huge watermelon is like $6. And it's a fraction of the cost.
Oh yeah, they kill you on.
Oh, they do. That whole cutting up, they really do. Look at this. So cheesy. You can see those stretchy cheese pulls in here. This is what's going to make it absolutely delicious. We're going to let me flip these real quick, and then we're going to grab our sourdough out of the oven. But look at this nice syrup on them. They're kind of slippery today. And then when this batches, what we'll do is we'll transfer it over into our sauce when they're done. But it's nice to just cook them up quickly. Pull this out of the way because it's going to be hot when we come over here. Okay, I hear ya. Whoop, I lost my oven mitt. Look at our beautiful sourdough. It has a lovely golden brown crust. I like the lighter color because it makes it less crunchy and more chewy. Sit right here. I'm going to grab a trivet. I always like to get them out of my Dutch ovens as quick as possible because I don't want it to cook up on the bottom anymore. So look at our beautiful loaf here. My crazy scoring that I didn't really pay any attention to. But we have the pumpkin seeds on it. And it's just our traditional loaf inside. So it's going to be nice and fluffy. But that crunch on the outside is amazing. And then look, we'll have a nice golden brown bottom. Which is why you take it out of your Dutch oven right away. Because this Dutch oven will stay at like 450, 500 degrees for another good 20 minutes. And it will keep cooking your bread. So don't leave it in there. Flip it out. You can put it on a drying rack or I just put it on my cutting board so it's ready for when we're ready to eat. Okay.
Yeah, you have a question? How'd you learn to cook like this?
And you know what? It's just been years of practice. I have been cooking for my family since I was 13 years old. I started cooking, we started off taking like one meal a night, each of like us younger kids. And then I slowly started taking more and more nights of dinner to where I was cooking like 4 or 5 days a week. And I really love it. And I have always had a passion for it, and I've had a pretty good palate. And so I would go out to like a restaurant and we'd eat something, and then I'd be like, oh, I gotta figure out how to make this at home. And like a lot of times, you know, the restaurants will tell you what ingredients they are, so I've got to start, and then I'll be figuring it out and trying to make it all work. But I will say, you know, it's just practice over time, and then you get better and better at it.
You have a comment that someone wishes they had the confidence to start on sourdough.
You know what? It is a lot easier than you think. Don't be afraid by it. It's a really fun journey, and we're actually about to start a new starter journey for everyone, so they can learn how to make their starter. Once you have your starter, and I will say you can start making bread after a week most of the time, but your best breads aren't going to happen until like a month out when your starter is really established. But you'll still be able to make so many great recipes along the time, and it's not hard. And there's so many delicious things you can do, and it's so good for you. Okay, we've got our first batch of shrimpies in. Let's add our next one. I was really nervous to start sourdough. Sourdough has always been my favorite bread, and I'd always just been growing up making yeast breads or using a bread machine. And so I finally like took the plunge, you know, a year or so ago, and I have been loving it, and I don't regret it one bit. I've had a couple bad loaves, you know, but I feel like you learn something from it. One of the loaves I had was because I had put my loaf to cold proof outside in my drink fridge, and my drink fridge has a spot that like freezes everything, and my loaf froze. And I thought, oh, how bad can it be? Don't ever cook up a frozen loaf. It won't cook. It was so gummy and dense. But you learn things. You'll learn how your house like really messes with things, like the temperature of your house. So if you keep a warmer house, you can make bread faster because it ferments faster and proofs faster. So like this one was really proofing up a lot when it was filling out, but I think it's going to be so good. You can even see like it's got a nice push on it. It's gonna be so fluffy inside. Okay, let's get the shrimp cooking up. Let's see if I need to add anything else. Maybe we're gonna put fresh parsley. I'm gonna add a little bit more lemon. I like the lemon cuts through the spiciness, I find. And my daughter Evie, she always loves to eat the lemon. So we'll add a little bit of lemon. I'm gonna try to get it on top of the shrimp because I think the lemon on the shrimp is going to be really good. Okay. There we go. It's kind of like lime in Mexican food. It goes well. This lemon's gonna cut through and just make that spiciness flow a little bit better. Okay, we can start to see the tips up here. We're gonna flip them. And remember we seasoned our shrimp with lemon juice, paprika, garlic salt, and Old Bay seasoning, and we're cooking it up in our bacon grease. So it's gonna have just such a good savory flavor. And you wanna cook your shrimp on high, because you don't want to go, this is something that I will say, shrimp and scallops you want to do high. You don't want to go low because you want to sear them. They cook through really fast. So if you cook them on too low of a temperature, you're going to get a rubbery result. So you want to cook them up nice and high. Okay, and I've got that. I'm going to start getting ready because these will be done in about 30 seconds. We'll be able to plate up our dinner. But that's what I will say. If you're not used to cooking shrimp, it's really easy. And this is one that you don't have to guess when they're done, because when they are pink, they are done. And it's funny how they'll just change colors right in front of your eyes. There we go. And I think we can start adding, yep. I'll turn this off. And we're going to add these into our sauce over here. And then we can serve up. And then I'll show you how we'll serve this up today, because you want to scoop this over your grits, because this sauce is going to really season up your grits. Okay, look at all those shrimpies in there. So good. Okay, got my plate. Let me I need a little shovel here because I want to get my ladle that sauce on, and my tongs for my salad, and we are ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna start out. These are our 4 cheese grits using Gouda, Swiss, Gruyere, and Parmesan cheese. Look at all of that cheese. It's just gonna be so gooey. You wanna make a nice bed right here, and that's really key, because we're gonna take our shrimp and our grits, and we're going to pour it right over the top, and that is going to add so much flavor to it. That sauce has so much flavor into it, and it's going to just really pop. And then we have our garden salad that we'll put on the side with our balsamic ranch. So I'm going to shake it up, and we're going to drizzle our homemade balsamic ranch on here. And then we'll have our homemade sourdough bread to go with it. So we'll cut that up in just a little bit, and you can dip that in the sauce, and it's going to be so good. I love shrimp and grits. I love this meal. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just find that link, search for the recipe that we made, and cook along with me again at home. Again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.